Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In our previous video, we discussed how we can use Python to execute Unix or Linux commands and use that for automation. Similarly, in this video, we will discuss how we can connect to database and execute SQL statements using Python. In production support, it is very much needed that we have to execute certain SQL statements, generate a report and send to stakeholders, or maybe even during any incident outages, we may have to fetch certain data from database. So for this, we can use Python. The use case is very simple. We want to connect to a database, run a SQL query and generate a report. Okay, let's get started. So I have created already a file db underscore connect.py. So I'll start my code. SQLite 3 I will import. I will import CSV. I will import date time and I will import sys. So SQLite 3 is a built-in Python module that allows Python to talk to a database. I am using SQLite because for demo purpose as it doesn't need any setup. While in production, you may be using Oracle, PostgreSQL, MySQL, or Sybase databases. So the Python logic remains the same, but you may have to tweak certain connection parameters, right? So let me know in the comment section if you want me to cover any particular database so I can do it in my upcoming videos. For now, for this demo purpose, we will use SQLite 3. And then I'm importing CSV. That is because we are fetching the data and writing it into a CSV file as the report. And then we are importing date time. In production, logging is very much important. So while we are logging log monitoring for this script, we can write what exactly time each of these uh, execution happened. So that's why we will need date time. And then sys allows us to exit the script safely when something goes wrong. So that's why we are importing. Next, I will define certain parameters. So this is our connection string connection.dp and then output file. So where we want the data should be to be written db underscore report dot csv. So here I'm defining the parameters at the beginning of the script, which is ideal in production because if you want to reuse these variables, you can do in your entire script. So any changes to the path or the file name, you can do it at one place rather than doing it the multiple places if you hard code the values, right? So after that, I will also define SQL query variable. So here I will actually give the actual SQL statement that I want to execute. So let me write down the statement first. Select ID, username, status and created it from transactions table where status equal to failed. So all failed transactions I want to fetch. So here I'm using multi-line string. So in Python you can use these triple quotes to define multi-line string. So this helps us to write SQL statement as we write it in any IDE of the database like SQL DBX or SQL developer. Similarly, you are writing here. This helps us in increasing the readability of the SQL statement. Also avoids any manual error while syntactical error that you are doing while writing the query. So after that, let's define a function. So first step for us to fetch data is to connect to the database. So let's define a function connect to DB. So for this, we need the connection string. Sorry. So DB path, whatever we define, we will pass it to this function. Okay. And next we will define it in the try block. So anything that you suspect that there can be chances of failure, such statements you have to define in the try block. So If any failure happens, the exception gets caught rather than the script terminating. Uh, yeah, so we catch such exceptions. So here I will define it as con equal to SQLite 3 dot connect. So I'll pass the parameter that we received, db path. Next I will print as an info that database connectivity is successful. Okay, this is what we will type, and then I will return the connection. So from this function I will return this connection string so that we can use it in a script in other functions. Once this is done, next what we need to define is except block exception as e. So here we will type print, and we will give it as error database connectivity failed, and then we will give the exception string, and of course sys dot exit. So this is the useful of imports is what we did. So we gracefully exit from this script. So our first function is done. We are connect. We have defined function to connect to the database. The next step, what we have to do is we have to fetch the data. Right? We have connected to the database, and next is we have to fetch the data. For this, we need the connection string and the query. Connection string we are returning from here, and query we will pass it as a parameter. So again, we will use the try block to do this, and we will define a cursor variable. So cursor is a object that actually runs the SQL commands on the database. So using the connection string, we will create a cursor object, and from that cursor object we will execute the query that we will pass. So once it gets executed, next we will define a rows variable to fetch all the data. So we will use the fetch all function to fetch all the rows, and we will put it into a rows. So basically fetch all creates a list of tuples. So those list of tuples is placed into the rows variable, and then we will print an info saying that SQL query execution is successful, or maybe better we will what we will do is we'll display how many records we fetched. So fetched, we can use len method to display the count, and we'll say fetch these many records. So we'll use the formatting, close this. Yeah, so we fetched these many records, we will type it, and then we will return the rows so we can use it in the next method. Next we will do the same exception as e. So here we will print error. So here we will say SQL execution failed. Okay, and we will give the exception string that we received, and of course sys.exit one for gracefully exiting from the script. So we have now the script function ready to fetch the data. Let me correct this typo here, fetch data. Next, after fetching the data, the next step is we have to define a function to generate the CSV report. So whatever data we have fetched, we have to write it to a CSV. So let's define a method called as write CSV. Rows is the one of the input parameter, and the file name is the another input parameter. So again here in the try block, what we will do, first we will open that file with open file name, and then the mode should be write mode because we want to write it, and new line is equal to as file. So this is our file descriptor. So here we are using with open. With allows us to automatically close the file that we have opened. So that is why we are using the with clause. And next we will define a writer. So basically we will create csv dot writer method, and we will pass the file descriptor to it. So we have the writer cursor now. So first we will use the write row method to write to the file. So any report you would see, the first row will be the column. So let's pass the column. So columns has to be uh, so it takes list as a input. So let's pass that column as list. So we have id, and then we have username, and then we have I think status, and finally we have created it. So these are the columns. So once we have written that, then we will write the actual rows that we fetched. So you can see the difference here. This is right row and this is right rows. So right row writes only one row, while right rows sequentially writes all the rows that we received. So finally we will print saying that report generation, successful, and maybe we'll give the file name here. Okay, this is done, and then of course we will handle the exception part. Exception, sorry, except and exception as e. So basically we will print here as error. So for many reasons the file writing may fail. It can be that the file is not existing or the file is corrupt, various reasons. So we will handle that here. Failed generation of report, and as usual we will come out the script gracefully in such case, right? So we have all the functions now ready which we need for performing this action. The next step, of course, we have to bring this all together in what sequence we want to execute it. So for that, let's define a main function. So in main function, let's basically do some log part. So ideally you can write it to a log file, but for now I will just type it here itself. Production script to generate report started, something like that. I'll just type at the beginning before starting the execution, and then also I will give one more thing is timestamp. So basically what we will do here is we will take the date time method that we use to take time dot now module. From date time module we will use the now method, so basically to print the current time. So once that is done, then we have to define the connection string. For that we will use connect to db. So here we will pass the db path that we defined already at the top, the variable. Once the connection is established, then we need to call the fetch data method. So for this we'll pass this connection string and the SQL query that we defined. Once we receive it, then we of course call the write csv method. So here we will pass the rows and the output file name that we defined at the top. So once this is done, our file is ready, so we will close the connection to the database. This is very much important. Again, I have done a typo, it should be fetch data. Okay, once we have closed the connection, then maybe we will print the same thing again. So I'll just copy paste the same thing. So here we will say completed. the timestamp, right? So we are done with the main step, and then we will give here if main is equal to main, we'll call main method. So this line ensures the script runs only when executed directly. So this is a Python best practice and very common in production scripts. So we are done with the script. Let's just have a look if we have any syntactical error. Looks good. So let's save the script, and now let's go and execute a script. Python 3. So dbconnect.py. So here if you can see, we have started with the execution and then you have an error. SQL execution failed. No such table called as transaction. So this is something which I purposefully kept because in production system also you may face this, but in general in production you will have the tables and the database ready until and unless you give a wrong table or wrong schema. But in this case I have not created any database table as of now, so it's a genuine error that I got. So I have created a script just to create a dummy table and put some dummy data into it. So let me execute that script now. Python 3 setup db. Let me know if you want more details on this. This is just same thing. We will just connect to the database, create a table, and then put some data into it. So database and transaction table created with sample data. So now our data is ready. So let me re-execute our earlier script and let's see what happens. Okay, it is still saying the same. Let me see what is wrong with this. Okay, so basically I think I had not saved it, that script. So now production script generated, report started, database connectivity is successful, fetch to two records, report generation successful. So let's see if we have got the report. So if you see, the report is generated and this is the data that we had set up in the temporary Alice, Bob, Charlie were only failed ones were Alice and Charlie while Bob was success. So that's exactly what we have got here. Thank you guys for watching. Please do like, subscribe and share this video with your friends, and also do provide your honest feedback and suggestions for the next video, any topic that you want me to cover in the next video. Thanks again for watching.